another really important thing is mentoring. So, having someone who has gone before you, not necessarily even older than you, but has gone through what you're going through. You can be at a different stage of life, to speak into your life, and to be open with them. And then you can do it also with someone else who's coming along behind them. So one of the women who probably spoke the most into my life was Aunt Bet. She's not like really my aunt, but everyone called her Aunt Bet. And she just passed away this spring at 97. And she was still like baking oat cakes for people who were discouraged, leading a ladies' Bible study every single week, even through the pandemic, because you're not going to stop this 97-year-old woman. I don't care what you say. And she was amazing. And sitting at her feet was just literally just the best. Learned so much from her. And now, I can and have been speaking to lives of young women who are in the middle of the freak show, up to their eyeballs in all the kids and all that stuff. And to be able, even though I'm not perfect and I certainly don't have it all together even now, but I can speak some truth to them. And I think that's important. And we know that's biblical, right?
Hello and welcome to the Disrupt the Everyday podcast. We're here to help you navigate life while disrupting the status quo. Our discussions cover a number of topics relevant to everyday life. We discuss everything from relationships to entrepreneurship. We also engage in some difficult but important conversations. And now, here are your hosts, Brian and Tanya Hamilton.
Welcome to another episode of the Disrupt the Everyday podcast. Today we'll be talking about the freak show that is life, and we'll be discussing this with Tess Scott. Tess, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
No, thank you for making the time. We especially want to thank you because we know that today is your anniversary, so we do appreciate you making the time to join us. So when we're having this conversation, it is September 9th, and Tess is celebrating her anniversary. So again, thank you very much for making the time for us.
It's a pretty special day, I have to say.
Absolutely. So we're going to start off by asking the loaded question that lets us get to know you. Who is Tess Scott?
So Tess Scott is a speaker. I love speaking to women, a writer, an author now, a mom of 8 boys, a wife, and a black sheep turned Jesus girl.
All right. So a black sheep turned Jesus girl. Let's start there. There's so much to all of that. But let's start with the black sheep piece. So again, you kind of concluded with that, but let's kind of start off there. So black sheep turned Jesus girl. Can you unpack that for us?
Yeah, I think that if you just met me, you might meet me speaking at an event of 100 or a couple hundred women, and I'm up on stage. I might have a clothing malfunction, fall off the stage. A lot of different things could happen, but you would hear me saying about how faithful God is and how there's hope and all these things, which are all true, and you would never guess what my life has been like. If I look back over my life, I'll take you back a ways to when I was maybe in high school. I got pregnant when I was 19 years old. Then I got married, which is what you did in 1985 when you were pregnant. And I was married for about a year, had a little boy, and he's amazing. And he's 37 years old. Don't do the math. And so my life was this cycle of relationships, men, marriage, kids, divorce, relationships, men, and the cycle just continued and continued. And it was like I was always looking for that elusive answer. They say that hindsight's 20/20, and looking back, there was definitely a pattern here. But when you're in the middle of it, when you're living in the middle of it, it feels like putting one foot in front of the other is all that you can do, and there's always that chance, like, this is the guy, or this is the job, or this is the house, or this is the church, or this is the whatever it is that you're using to fill that hole inside you. Not everybody fills that with relationships, but that was me because of whatever reasons in my life. And it took a long time for God to get a hold of my life. And not that he couldn't, but it took me a long time to unroll, or something had to happen. And he did. And I'm ever so grateful. And so now I want to speak to other women and tell them, like, there's hope in life, even though it doesn't feel like it right now, even though maybe today you're drowning in wherever you are. Maybe you're drowning in loneliness. Maybe you're in a horrible marriage. Maybe whatever is happening in your life, there's hope. And I want to teach women how to find hope in their freak show life.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, the reality is, we all live it, right? And it looks different for everyone. I think that's the neat thing. Like, I saw your book cover, and I was with my mom the other day, and she's like, "Oh, that looks so good. Like,
Yeah.
I want to check it out." But it relates to everybody. And I think that's the most important thing, because it's just going to look different. Now, in regards to that, I guess you could say, revolving wheel there for a while. Like, you say you have 8 boys. So how did like all that go on in the matter of how many years, the marriages and then the kids that came?
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, my oldest son is 37. And then I got remarried again, of course, brought him with me. And then we had 3 boys. I have to count here, 4 boys. Sorry. Because they all blend in together.
Oh, for sure.
We had 3 boys, and then adopted a boy, special needs, because we were foster parenting at the time.
Okay.
So we had him since birth and adopted him, TJ, and he's special needs. He has fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. And then we got divorced. Then I married my husband, Rick, and he already had 2 boys who were the same age as 2 of my boys. So that's handy. It should just blend easily. That'll be like seamless, they'll all be friends. It's like, we've all seen the Brady Bunch. It's no problem. Not so much. And then I got pregnant and thought, hey, number 8. And so here we are. Yeah, with another boy. So, and he is 19. So I want to say there is a hallelujah raising up as he grows up. And I can't believe it that we'll ever have. I've never not lived with kids. I've never, I went from living at home with little brothers to getting married. So moved right to my, married house and had a baby. And then I've never not lived with my kids for 38 years. So it's going to be weird. And my youngest son said to me the other day, like, you're going to be really sad when I move out someday. And he said, what are you talking about? Like, I've been thinking about this day for so long. I mean, I want him to move out and be good and healthy and, and have good relationships and all those things and be doing well. But I don't want him living in my basement forever. I'm not one of those moms who wants to hold on to the apron strings. There's no apron. Like, out you go.
Out you go. Yeah. So in regards to that, then let's just talk about blended families for a little bit, because obviously, in 2022, maybe back, early 90s, not as common, but now it's so very common. So I would love to hear any suggestions you have on how do people make it work when they come together as a blended family?
Yeah. Well, I can tell you some of the things that we struggled with. So maybe not some of the things that we were excellent at, but we sure learned in those years. One of the things was it's really, really difficult in a blended family because you come into it thinking, when we came into the family, I think I felt not secure maybe in our relationship because you come from another relationship that has fallen apart. Mm-hmm. So I was not always cool with my husband wanting to spend time alone with his 2 kids. Right. So he'd say, hey, this weekend, we had kids every other weekend kind of thing. So he'd say, this weekend I have the boys and I want to take them fishing. And so I would think, well, why don't you want me to go fishing with you? Like, why don't, I was really insecure. And so then he would feel guilty and take me as well. I mean, now I'm older and more secure. And I think, good, go fishing with the boys. Like, I don't care. But I wasn't prepared for that at that stage of life for whatever reasons, like insecurity, immaturity, all those things. And if if I could give advice, I would say it's really good for that parent to spend time alone with their own kids. Like they're all both of our kids, but it would have been really helpful for him to be able to do that and not have feelings of guilt.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to be a little bit facetious in how I pose this question here, but obviously, you married Rick,
Yes.
and then things were just perfect after that, right?
No. I guess you weren't talking to him. No, we had tons of struggles. We had tons of struggles. And some of them were things like, we found out that our adopted son had fetal alcohol. Like we didn't know that he was special needs. We adopted him when he was, a year old. So you don't know what's going on. They don't tell you those things. So we had some things to work out with him, his behaviors and all those things, and even behaviors of kids. And kids are blending together. Like they didn't ask for this. They didn't say, hey, how about dad moves to another house and you bring me some more brothers to have to deal with and a new dad? Like, no, none of them wanted that. So, there's a lot of relationships that being affected by this. And it wasn't easy. It was really, really difficult. Like we loved each other and that's all great and fine, but it was not easy. It was hard. And even if it was an intact family with 8 kids, I have to think there still would have been some issues. Okay. Like raising a huge family is difficult on its own. Like the amount of milk we went through, friends, that was like 8 boys, like 7 living at the same time, because by the time the youngest was born, our oldest was 18. So he was gone. So we actually honestly never had 18 living in the house at once. I mean, 18, it felt like 18. Have 8 living in the house at once, only 7. Only 7. Only, yeah. But we went through I know a lot of people listening are probably Americans, so you have jugs of milk, but in Canada we have bags of milk. So kind of equivalent, I guess. And we went through more than 1 big bag a day. So probably 10 bags a week. So 10 jugs, let's say, a week of milk. We could have had our own cow if we lived in the country. Would have helped. But yeah, things like there was a lot of things to deal with. But we also had a lot of fun. Like raising a big family is also really fun. There's some really great things about it. I needed to be reminded that on a lot of different days, though.
And it's like you get into that routine, you get into a groove, and my thing is like you ride it out until the bump comes, because the real and not that you're waiting for it to come, but it's just life, and there's less disappointment if there's a hiccup along. But while it's good, you enjoy it. And when stress, trauma, big situations arise, then I find personally you're a little bit more able to deal with that situation, right? And I had brought up, because reading through your book, number one, I love your book. I'm not a reader. Many people who listen to this know Brian's the reader. Like all the books, that's him. Doing the podcast has actually got me a little bit more intriguing. But I appreciate your book because it's like short stories. So even if I don't want to read front to back, I can, pick and choose. Anyways, there is a story, the heaviness and difficult battles in life. And, in that one, you were talking about marriage. And like back in 2013, how you went through a separation, divorce, and got remarried to Rick. So, there's that time in life where you had to go through those stressful times and, do the work, I guess. But can you just share a little bit more about that with us? Sure.
So in 2013, like things were rough for, probably over a year. But I thought to myself, this is what I thought, things are rough, but everything's going to be fine. Because we've been through rough times, and I was really living for the Lord. I mean, I was like leading Bible study. I was like doing personal time. I thought everything was smooth in that way. So when my husband came to me and said, like, I'm out, I don't love you anymore and I'm leaving, I was devastated, like every woman is. And I hit the ground. Like, I spent day after day with my face in the green carpet of my bedroom, just begging God to not let this happen. Do not let him leave, just not for the kids, for me, like, just after everything that we've been through. And I just couldn't, I thought, I can't live. I can't survive this again. I do not want this to happen. And yet God did. He allowed it to happen, and he left. And I tried to reconcile, and after a year, he was not interested. And so we got divorced, and that feels really final. Separation feels like, to me, separation felt like there was hope, and divorce felt
Right.
final. But I didn't give up. I still prayed every day that God would change his heart. Most of the time, like, my husband's not a fighter. He's more like an ignorer. So most of the time, if I texted him or something, he would just ignore me. Like, we didn't really ever fight. But after an amount of time, like 3 years of being divorced, he started answering if I texted about something. And then, like, we'd have conversations, and then we started talking. And then he took me out to dinner and asked me if, I won't go into the whole conversation, but he asked if he could be in my life. He just wanted to be in our life. He wanted to, he missed the camaraderie, the relationship, and he just wanted the chance. And he asked for forgiveness. And so I said yes. I mean, I was overjoyed. It's what I prayed for. And we worked through it. And it was the hardest thing in my whole life. Every day he made promises like this: you can ask me anything that has happened at any time, and I will always tell you the truth. Sometimes I didn't want to know, but I still needed to know. He always told me the truth. He talked, and he's, like I said, he's not a talker, right? But we went through conversations day in, day out. He didn't live here. He didn't live with me. We had separate houses. We didn't come together until we were married again. And then after 9 months, we got married on today in 2016. And yeah, it was just, it's the most amazing miracle of my life. And I'm so, so thankful for it. And my kids got to see it. Our kids got to see that God does miracles still. And still we bring that to their mind sometimes, like, well, what have we seen God do in the past? Because when we're looking for hope in the future, that's one of the biggest things, is remembering what God has done in the past. That's how, I think that's important. And I encourage people, like, that's the first step, remembering. And how are we going to remember? So when, like back in the Old Testament, when Moses is leading people around and they're grumbling and all that, and God leads them through the water on dry ground, and then he tells them to bring these stones out and to put them on the riverbed and build this big monument, so they'll remember what God did, and so that people coming after them will see it and say, hey, Grammy, why is there this big monument or this big pile of stones, and you tell them what God did. But, my husband won't let me build a big pile of stones in the backyard because we live in the city. So I had to think of something different. So I journal, I write every day, like, what is God doing? And what am I praying about? And then reading that, like, months or years later, and remembering, like, yeah, God did that. I remember God did that. And it just, like, cements it in your mind that God is always faithful. Even though at that moment I was not happy, it's not what I wanted to see happen, but I can see how I grew through it. I might not ever understand why it had to happen, but I can see that in the end, God was faithful.
Yeah, that's a pretty neat story. And I think encouraging too, right? For the person going through it. And like you said, sharing it with the kids, like being able, and I guess that's the whole point of that is the whole point of testimony and sharing, because it also encourages other people who may not be in the situation right now, but they may find themselves in it one day, and then they can look back and think, what? I don't know how my situation is going to end up, but I can be encouraged by Tess or whoever else, right?
Yeah. And God doesn't always do that, right? He doesn't always reconcile our relationships because it's not always best. Yeah. Like, he knows what's best. Who am I to question what's best? Like, I have lots of ideas. Clearly, they're not all good ones.
Right now.
Oh man.
I'll kind of put this facetiously again. So you and Rick get remarried, and then everything was smooth sailing from there, right?
Well, let me tell you this. 3 weeks after our wedding, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So I thought, are you kidding? Are you kidding, God? This is the worst timing in the world. Like, finally, I'm married again, and we can, be married and do married things. And like, I can't even imagine. I couldn't even imagine it. And I thought it was the worst timing ever. But now looking back, and this is the way it is, we don't always see the reasons for why we might never see the reasons for why some things happen. And sometimes we can, in the future, look back and see. And now I can look back, because it's been some years, and say that was actually the best timing as far as having cancer goes, because that timing allowed my husband to take care of me. I had no choice. I mean, I had to be vulnerable. It allowed him to show the kids that he was in for it, right? And if the timing was different, like, let's just pretend I got breast cancer, we're still divorced, and then he calls me up and says, hey, I heard you're sick, I want to come back. Like, no, that's not happening, right? I could never have trusted that. Yeah. So the timing was actually the best timing for that. And I can be thankful for that. And the way that we grew as we walked through it together. I remember one particular day when, there was tons of them, but one day when I was really, really down and crying, and just said to him, like, you didn't know this was going to happen when we got married. Like, you married me not knowing I'm going to have cancer, not knowing I'm going to have a mastectomy, not knowing I'm going to lose my hair. I don't look good bald. And, and he said, I didn't know those things, but this is what I knew. I knew that we were going to get married and we're going to grow old together. And likely one of us is going to have to take care of the other one at some point. And that's what I'm in for. And that was a gift. Yeah. That was a gift.
I can keep going. Sorry. I got it. That was good. That was good. There was something else. Okay, let's laugh for there's a story at the beginning, and I was reading it. We were driving to Nova Scotia, and you talked about the pants and you starting work. And I'm guessing it was probably maybe during that time of your separation where maybe you had to go back into the workforce. Mm-hmm. Anyways, can you share it? It was funny. It made me laugh out loud.
Oh my goodness. One second. Okay, so my son doesn't love it when I tell this story, but he probably isn't going to listen to this, so it's okay.
You're good.
Yeah. I'm good. Yeah, I was working. I had just got a job at an internet supplier, so I was working in the office, kind of the receptionist and doing that kind of thing. And I got up in the morning to go to work, and my sister called me, and so some people that were friends of hers who were missionaries from out of town were coming to town that day to stay at her house. But her daughter woke up with the flu, like, the kind of flu you don't want to share the house with. And so she couldn't have them over, and they had some kids. It was a fairly big family. So I said to her, hey, they can just come and stay here. They can stay here. I'll sleep on the couch. My son's gone to his dad's tonight. That's no problem. And she was so relieved. So I hung up the phone, and then I realized, oh my goodness, I better change the sheets and clean up the stuff and throw all the stuff into baskets and hide it in the closets and, do the 10-second tidy that you do when someone's coming over to your house, because they were coming right after work. So I ran around the house doing all that. And then I looked up, and it was like time to leave for work. And I call that the space-time continuum, when you have like lots and lots of time for work, or time to get ready, and then in like 1 second, all of a sudden you're late. So I went to the bedroom to put on my black pants. I had one pair of black pants for work, and they weren't there. And I was like, oh my goodness, I only have one pair, and I'm late walking, or I don't want to be late walking out the door. And I ran down to the laundry room, and there they were. And I forgot that I had washed them. So I bring them up, and I try to put them on, and they are so tight. Like I know I've gained weight, because this job is like sitting down all day, and I'm used to having a job where I like run around all the time. And plus I'm getting older, like it just happens. I don't know. And I like chocolate. There's lots of reasons. So I gained a little bit of weight, and they were tight. And I think that it helped that in high school we used to wear really tight pants and you had to lay down on the bed to do them up. So I may have, I got them on. It took some work to get them on, and I had to lay on the bed to get them finally done up. And then, I had to pray that the button wouldn't pop off. And I drove to work. And then my job, I had to sit up on this stool, like a tall stool at the front counter. And like, I couldn't bend. I'm not exaggerating. Like, I honestly could not bend. It's like flat Stanley, man. I had to so I just basically prop myself up leaning against the stool. And I was so uncomfortable. Like, it really was not fun. I'm sure it wasn't pretty. There was no mirror, thank goodness. And so people came in and I'm just faking my way through the day. And then it's lunchtime and I can't eat anything. Well, first of all, I can't go to the lunchroom because I can't sit down. If I eat something, I'm not going to be able to go to the washroom. I can't go pee. I can't go pee all day because if I get these off, I'm not getting them back on. I can't lay on the floor in that room. It's this tiny little room. It's not going to fit. It was just the longest day. And then right before the day ends, they call this sales meeting with my boss, who I have never talked to since the day they hired me. So I come into this room with this, long table where we're supposed to sit for this meeting, and I can't sit in the chair. So I just stood, which probably looked just really awkward. Plus my pants were so tight. Oh my goodness. Anyways, it was just such a terrible day. And I could not wait to get home. Finally, I'm watching the clock go so slowly around. Finally, I drive home, and I don't even know if I shut the door of the car, unlock the house, get in the house, run in the bathroom. And I'm sitting there the best feeling in the world is going pee when you have to pee that bad. And then I look down and there's this tag on the inside of my pants and it says H&M. And I thought I don't buy pants at H&M. I don't know if they have that store in the States, but H&M, oh, I bought pants for Hayden there. And then I realized, oh my goodness, I've been wearing my 12-year-old son's pants for the entire day. Oh, it was just it was a day not to be forgotten. And people still often will mention it around me. Yeah. I never fit in his pants now, but he's also much more careful where he puts his clothes. I have to say that. So.
Well, hey, there you go.
He doesn't leave his pants laying around as much as he used to. That's for sure.
Oh man. No, it was a good laugh. And I think that's the neat thing about the book, right? And you have some, real life situations, right? That end up getting you teared up, and then next page you flip and there's something like that. And that's just life though, right? 1 minute we're laughing, 1 minute we're crying, whether it's parenting or at work, however the situation may go.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah. I'd like to think that some of the stories are made up, but actually they're all true. So it is life. It is definitely life. But there's hope in life, right? And that's the whole point of the book, is that we can all find hope.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Now, I'm just curious to know, we speak about your faith. Was this always a part of your life? Did you grow up in church, or did you kind of find your way as an adult?
So I went to Sunday school when I was a really little girl in this musty basement of a little Baptist church. And then we didn't really go to church. We went a few times when I was a teenager, I guess. My parents weren't Christians. My grandparents were. So my grandparents took us when we were young. And then I was kind of interested in my teen years off and on. And then I just walked away from it until later on in life. So I had that kind of little seed, I had that seed, but I didn't really get it. I didn't really get it until later on.
I want to go and talk about just, I guess more so for the ladies, the comparison factor as mom and, ladies, and how we can easily get caught up in, what's she doing in her house and how is she parenting and stuff like that. And in the book, you had talked about your mother-in-law coming over to help you, and, and I'm pretty sure at the time, you were married to her son, and, just thought that was pretty neat to see. Right. But also the fact that, you did that whole quick tidy up, and then your kids baited you out, which, mine like to do that as well. And then just wrapping up that story and reminding us that, it's very easy to compare and to get caught up in that when it comes to being a mom and all that. So I would love to hear, some encouraging words that you would have for us for that.
Yeah, I think that that is so true. And I think that it's even worse now than maybe it was when I was a young mom all those years ago.
Mhm.
Because I think when I was a young mom, and everything was in black and white, like I would talk to my friends in person, or I would call them up, on my rotary dial phone, and I would see their life like it really was. And I would
Yeah.
hear them on the phone. I'd hear their kids in the background, like, pulling at them and yelling and whatever. Like their life was a freak show and my life was a freak show. And now I see more younger people that are connecting a lot on social, right? So when they get new friends, maybe they see them first on Instagram or wherever, on social media. And my caution to young women is this: if you see someone on social media and you see her house and it's the big house with the wreath on the door and the pumpkin on the porch and it looks all beautiful, and you think that that sister's life is perfect, like it's not. That's not real life. And if you walk into her house and you go in her living room, there is laundry on her couch, just like at your house, because that's real life.
Yeah.
And we really need to start being real with each other. Have friends that you can just be real with and say, yeah, I'm really having it. Like friends that are not, I think we all have like a lot of, it's like levels of friendship, right? Yep. So there's the levels, like there's the Facebook friend. So those are the friends that, you maybe went to school with, or they go to your church, or, they're in your neighborhood. And when you die, they're going to put your memorial on Facebook. Okay. So that's the level of commitment that they have in your life. And then the next level of friends are like your village. So they're like, they know more about you. They know your kids' names. Maybe they're praying for you when they hear that you have cancer, or, they're involved in your life in certain ways. And when you get sick, they're going to bring a casserole to your house, right? Because you care. And that's what you're going to do for them. That's the level of friendship that you have. And we need lots of people in that level. We need to be in other people's lives on that level and praying for them and being, the hands and feet of Jesus to them. But then our closest friends, though, like our BFF friends, those are the ones that we need to be like so open and honest with and vulnerable. Yeah. And telling them everything, like not saving that little 1% that you don't tell people, because those are the people, they're the people that are going to sit with you in chemo, right? Those are the people that are going to be watching over you and reminding you like, hey, you're struggling with this. I don't think you should be doing what you're doing right now, right? They're going to take you to task. They're going to speak the hard things, and you're going to speak the hard things. You're going to give them permission, and you're going to do it to them too.
Right.
That is so important. It's so, so important. And only people of the same sex as you, right? Not people of the opposite sex in this role ever. But we need to have that relationship with other women as women and say, yeah, I want you to have my back. I want you to say, Tess, you have trouble with other men, or you have had in the past, and you're talking to a single guy and your husband's out of town, or what? I don't know. Whatever it is, right? Whatever the struggle is with that woman, I want to have her back and say, like, you don't need to be doing this, or, how's the relationship going with your mom, or, and just being there for each other. It's so important.
Mm-hmm. And it's that vulnerability, right? Which, again, I mean, I'm going to 40, but in this day and age that a lot of people don't have. And maybe it's because they don't have that close friendship network, or they've been burnt before, what have you. But it is so important, especially like when you're parenting, being able to share that, like, okay, this is what's going on, because guess what you're most likely going to get back is, oh, I've been there, done that. Do you want to hear some suggestions on how I've dealt with? Or, don't worry, here's some things I can recommend, right? And it's encouraging, because then you realize, okay, you know what, it's not just my kids when it comes to that kind of stuff. Or, you know what, right now, maybe it is just me, but they can help, they can pray, they can be there to encourage me and to check in. And in this fast-paced society, it's, if you don't actually say anything, unfortunately, you're going to have friends that love you, but may not stop to ask what's up or how can I help. And that's just it. And not to say that they don't care, but you do have to put yourself out there to, so almost receive back.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I think that it used to be like our society used to be, and lots of places in the world it still is, where people
Mhm.
live lives, share their lives together on a daily basis,
Yeah.
Mhm.
right? But in North America, like we don't do that anymore because we think maybe we don't need each other. Like independence
Right.
is the biggest thing, right? I'm
Yeah.
a woman, hear me roar, whatever it is. Like, so we don't think that we need each other, but we really do.
Yeah.
We really do need each other. So I think that that's really good advice to,
Mhm.
and I think that about what I said about not sharing that 1%, because each of us has this little, I don't know if I want to call it a secret or this little thing that I think like, wow, if I told her about this, like, I don't think she's going to think I'm cool anymore,
Mm.
because I am, or I don't think she's going to want to be my friend anymore if she knows I struggle with this. But the truth is, when you tell that little thing, then that little thing loses its power,
Mhm.
Yeah.
right? Because you've shared that now, and that sister's going to watch out for you in that and pray for you in that. So it's good to share that. I mean, not on the church prayer chain or anything like that, but just with your best friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, well, I definitely appreciate that part, and I think every time that now we're going to be hosting people, I'm going to play that part of the podcast, just because we don't do the quick clean, we do a thorough clean. It's probably one of the most contentious times in our family when everybody's cleaning up. It's like for me, it's at the point where I'm like, you know what, I don't really need friends this badly if this is what we have to do every time someone comes over. So
Actually, on that note, a couple weeks ago we were at church and the pastor gave an example about that. And our one son, he will bait me out every time. Every time he looks down the aisle, like down the row, and he's like,
Mhm.
right, like not even just kept his head up and like looked over all the way down,
Yeah,
looked over
all
and
the way
pointed. I'm
around.
like, yes, that's me.
Yeah,
Oh, but you gotta laugh. You have to laugh.
yeah, kids.
Oh man.
I wanted to also just point out a couple of the resources. So obviously you have your book up behind you there, so we have it here as well. I'm going to just pull your note out. So Tess's book, Listen Sister. Also, we're going to highlight your website
Thank you.
and just let everybody know as well. There's this is pretty cool. This poster that you have here, 10 signs that your life is a freak show. So you just go in there, give your email, you'll be able to download this. But there's a couple of them here that really stuck out. Now, just I'm gonna go right to number 10 because this was an interesting one for me as a man because it made me think back to something. But number 10, an inordinate number of conversations every day are about poop. And the reason why I thought of this, I remember my best friend, who's been my best friend since I was 12 years old. I remember after my first son was born, he had his daughter 6 months later, and I remember calling him one day, just really excited that diapers were on sale at no price. It was a conversation when we were playing basketball years before that I never thought I'd be excited to have with my friends. So,
Yeah.
but I think it just goes to show that to your point, all of us have that element of a freak show in our life. There's things that maybe we don't necessarily want to share. And when you talk about those social media examples, yes, people tend to post their successes on social media. No one wants to post that pile of laundry, on their couch on social media. And
Mhm.
one of the common problems that we have in society, I think, is that we're always comparing our worst day against someone's best social media post that's highlighting the highest point in their life in some cases.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. That's so true. I think another really important thing is mentoring. So, having someone who has gone before you, not necessarily even older than you, but has gone through what you're going through. You can be at a different stage of life, to speak into your life, and to be open with them. And then you can do it also with someone else who's coming along behind them. So one of the women who probably spoke the most into my life was Aunt Bet. She's not like really my aunt, but everyone called her Aunt Bet. And she just passed away this spring at 97. And she was still like baking oat cakes for people who were discouraged, leading a ladies' Bible study every single week, even through the pandemic, because you're not going to stop this 97-year-old woman. I don't care what you say. And she was amazing. And sitting at her feet was just literally just the best. Learned so much from her. And now, I mean, I can and have been speaking to lives of young women who are in the middle of the freak show, up to their eyeballs in all the kids and all that stuff. And to be able, like, even though I'm not perfect and I certainly don't have it all together even now, but I can speak some truth to them. And I think that's important. And we know that's biblical, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think too, because you just have you've experienced so many things that people can relate to you. And even if, you're not there saying like, yeah, I've got it all figured out, this is what you need to do, you can at least say you're not alone.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And the great thing about Listen Sister is, speaking of not having it all together, is that if I'm on a stage, speaking to a bunch of people and I fall off the stage, they all think it's just part of it. Right. So like, oh, her dress is inside out. That's probably just part of it. There's no expectation. It's really makes it easier that way. Yeah.
Oh man. And I think even in regards to the community that people have, being in church and growing up in church, obviously there's so much community that comes there. And for different times in life, you see the benefit. Well, yeah, you see the benefits, right? And, even for somebody who's not in a faith-based community, there's still options to build that into your life, right? Like it could be a parent on one of your kids' sports teams, like just talking to a mom at the park. You never know where a conversation could go. And it goes back to that being vulnerable, just enough to say hi, sit down with somebody and just start chatting. And you never know. Some of my greatest friendships come from that, right? And how they can be a benefit in a season of life. Maybe they're not there forever, but a season of life to help you get through, to be an encouragement to you, and vice versa. So I think it's just, just that reminder that we all can have support somewhere, but sometimes it's going to be people coming to you. You got to put yourself out there.
Yeah, that's right. I have a freaky story. You want to hear it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, this is a freaky story. So this is like years ago, before when Rick and I weren't even back together yet. And I was in home hardware store lining up. And the woman who was checking me through, she had like really short hair and like a bandana sort of thing on. She was really friendly. And she gave me my change and there was a nickel and it fell on the floor. And so I said like, "Ooh, I got to get that for Ramoli, And so I picked it up and she's like, "What's Ramoli?" And I said, "Oh, Ramoli's like a card game that we play with all the girls and it's hilarious. It's so fun and you play for nickels and you have a glass of wine and, you eat nachos and whatever." And she's like, "Oh, that sounds fun." And then I left and then I got out to my car and I felt like this like strong nudging, let's say, like, "Tess, you will go back in and you will invite this woman." And I thought, oh, I cannot go back in and invite this woman I've never seen before in my life to come to my house. But there was no way I couldn't. I mean, I had to. There's like, when you know, right? So I went back in, I waited in line again. I get all up to the front of the line. Yeah, this is a crazy life. And I said to her, "Hi, my name's Tess. I was just here and I was telling you about Ramoli. And if you ever want to come, here's my card from work. And because it has my phone number on it, just give me a call." And she's like, "Okay." And she looked at me like I was crazy, which I'm used to. And I walked away. But I thought, oh, well, I did what I was supposed to. So like 2 weeks later, the woman calls me. She says, "Hey, this is Joanne from the hardware store. And I'm wondering if you're having Ramoli. I'd like to come." So she started coming, which was great. Right. And then, so then a year went by. Rick and I got back together. I got cancer, whatever. And then I'm back at the hardware store and I haven't really kept in touch when like over the course of being sick, I canceled Ramoli. That's how serious it was. And because I love Ramoli, I had to cancel it. Oh, no girlfriends coming over. I'm having chemo. So I hadn't seen her for some months. She didn't know what was going on. And I get to the front of the checkout and it looks like her, but she's got this like long curly hair. And I said, "Joanne, is that you?" And she's like, "Yeah." "Do I know you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's Tess, but I just had chemo and I didn't recognize you because you have long curly hair." And she said, "When I started coming to your thing, I had just had breast cancer." And I'm like, wow, like I didn't know that she had just had breast cancer. See, I have shivers right now thinking.
Yes.
When God kind of hooked us up and then bring us back around to I'm having it. So then we started meeting at a coffee shop and talking through some things that we both had shared as, experiences. And it was just like really wild. That's just really wild to me when God does things like that. Like he sees it. He just must love putting all those pieces together. Like, watch this.
Yeah, exactly. Watch this. If you're obedient. And that's the thing, right?
That's it.
Because I mean, there's so many times in our lives, you feel that nudging, right? Usually it's not that audible voice that,
Never.
but it's that nudging. It's that go back and do that.
Mhm.
And even in your book, you had talked about when you were driving and you had the kid and it was pouring rain and there is a lady, and there's that obedient story again.
Yeah. Yeah. It's happened a few times, and I don't like, it's happened many times that I didn't listen. Like
Yeah.
probably before I really even realized that that's what was going on.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Sometimes I have listened, and that day I saw this woman walking down the road, like a country road, and I thought I should pick her up, but I had all reasons why I shouldn't pick her up. Like, you never pick up strangers. We know what's not safe. And I was also turning just up ahead to go to my son's. So I turned. I didn't pick her up. I went to my son's and spent the day there or a few hours with my grandkids. And then it started pouring rain, thunderstorm. So I left, turned back onto that road, and a little ways down the road, here's this same woman still walking. And now she's walking in the pouring rain and she's just drenched. So, I knew I had to pick her up. And I actually have a deal with my husband where I don't pick up strangers, but God trumps my husband. So it was fine. So I rolled down the window and I thought, okay, I'll ask her if she wants a ride. But if she says no, then I'm out, because like I've done what I'm supposed to, right? So I asked her, I could barely hear her. And so she did come with me, and she got in the car, and she was thankful, I think, for the ride, but she told me her story. She just kept talking, and her dad had died. And she had somehow got a ride, like a taxi, got enough money for a taxi to go from the city to this small town, which is probably a 45-minute drive. So I don't know how much that would have cost. Mm-hmm. And to talk to the funeral director and get that arranged for his funeral. And then she was walking back home that day. Mm-hmm. After all of that sadness and grief that must have been in her heart. And I think, was she happy that I picked her up? I don't know. I think she probably, at the time, it seemed like she would have rather I just ran over her. Mm-hmm. She was just so full of grief. It's just so full of grief. But I know, and I don't pat myself on the back. Oh, you gave her a ride, because I didn't want to be honest. I'm busy. I have things to do. And I wasn't watching for it, but I'm thankful that I did obey, and what God taught me through this, because our whole life is just things that happen and God teaching us through them for watching him, so I'm thankful for that, and that I can pass that story on to somebody else, and hopefully they'll learn from it too.
Mm-hmm. And in regards to the obedience, I get a comment from the kids, you got to go clean your room. You got to go do this. Well, I don't want to. Well, do I want to make dinner every night? Do I want to drive you to all your programs? Not necessarily, but I do it because I know that's what's best, right? Yeah. And sometimes we don't know what's best, but in the grand scheme of things, being obedient and how you can see the benefits of that unfold in your life when you do go for it.
Right. And we're obedient because we love God. Your kids should be obedient. My kids are always perfectly obedient because they love me. No. But, you do things for your kids, not because you feel like it, but because you love them. Yeah. So love has part of it.
Yeah.
Part in it too. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, one thing I'm just thinking of now, because we have exactly half as many kids as you did. So, and I can, I know how busy it is with 4 kids now. Was there ever a time where you had, when you're at that peak of 8 kids, was there a time where all of them were involved in some kind of extracurricular activities, and it was that kind of struggle to get them to different places, or was that just not really a part of it growing up?
That wasn't so much a part of it. Rick's boys were in hockey, and a couple of our boys were in soccer at different times and stuff. And they went to Awana or, youth group at the church and stuff, but not a time when they were all going in different directions. We couldn't handle it. And also we couldn't afford it. We didn't have a lot of income. We were kind of paying our MasterCard with our Visa for a little while. My husband changed careers in the middle of that. So it was a rocky time, but we had tons of fun. So, and I remember someone saying to me, at the time, that it's really important to get your kids together so you can all talk about your feelings and what they're going through. And I don't think those people had boys, because my boys are not going to talk about their feelings. You know what, they're going to show you what they're feeling, and probably with, their fist or something. Mm-hmm. But if they had a problem with each other, they just fought. So, but what we did was, and this is what I recommend, we bought a game called The Settlers of Catan. So we bought it for Christmas in 07. And I'm not exaggerating. We played it every single day for over a year, and then more than once a week for the next few years, because the boys are all very competitive, very competitive.
Mhm.
So they don't want to talk about their feelings, but they will sit together if they can annihilate each other. And we spent so many good times over board games. And they still do. They still play games together all the time. And now they don't hate each other because they're all grown up. So it all worked out.
Yeah, it's that season, right? That one of those times where you have to say, they're going to be friends. They're going to get along one day, and hopefully they won't be as competitive in every single thing they do. Because yes, we have similar characteristics in our children.
Yeah.
But again, it's going back to the okay, we're here, but also it's good to imagine and to focus on even a couple years, right?
Mhm.
And also nurturing that, because I think as parents, yes, we don't have control of what the future brings, but we can help nurture how relationships are going to go once they're out of the house and that kind of stuff. Board games, spending times together. You don't need a ton of money for it. You don't need anything, right? It's just the time.
That's right.
And there's no excuses when it comes to that and the investment with your kids and your family. But yeah, as parents, we can definitely help nurture the relationships and nurture the future and for the family dynamic. I believe that.
Yeah. Yeah. And now they're standing up in each other's weddings, so they even like each other. Because they really, you read the book, there's stories, right?
Yeah.
They were not nice to each other. And almost every day there would be wrestle matches in my kitchen on the floor. And it was this hierarchy. It didn't matter who was older necessarily. It was who could take who. Yeah.
Right.
It was quite a place. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I could imagine with the 8 boys, because sometimes I'll be like, you guys stop. And then one of the boys will be like, well, we haven't put a hole in the wall, because I tell them the story about my brothers when we were all at home and they were pushing each other, and one went right through the hall. And yeah, that was an interesting one. Or their butt imprint in the drywall in my bedroom, right? And then my guys are like,
in the new house.
Yeah, in the new house, right? And then my guys are like, well, it's not that bad. We haven't broken your house. And I'm like, no.
So that's now the line, right? Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry, we had some holes too, but we looked at it like a way that our kids can learn things like how to do drywall.
There you go.
There you go.
Oh man.
Good way to learn the trades for sure. But no, we see the same thing with our twins. So our one daughter is a twin.
Okay.
So her and her twin brother, and speaking with the principal at our school last year, who also was the gym teacher at times, he said, one of the biggest challenges we had with them in gym was we had to put them on the same team because they're so competitive with each other.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. That's healthy.
So it definitely is a case with siblings, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the siblings of the same sex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing before we wrap up, just in regards to that and the parenting, right? Always keeping in mind, I guess, especially, when there's more than one child, that it's our job as well as parents to help pull out the gifts and the special characteristics that each of our children have. And I guess I focus a little bit more just because there are 4 and there's different drastic age gap. In between our youngest and our oldest, right? And I'm sure you dealt with this as well. Okay, we have all boys, but there's 8 of them and they're all so different. So there comes that time again where in the effort that as parents we do have to put into each and every one of them to help, nurture and bring what their God-given abilities out, right?
Yeah. I think a lot of the time I was just kind of trying to survive. I don't know. I mean, there was just treading water, a lot of treading water on my behalf.
Yes.
At the time. Yeah, they are all different. That is so true. And you kind of know because you're their mom as you're watching them grow up. Okay, I'm seeing leadership skills here. This is what I'm seeing you. And if you can speak that to those kids too, what a blessing that is on them to say, this is what I'm really seeing in you. I'm seeing leadership skills. And I love how you handled that situation, or how I'm seeing that you're a real nurturer. Look how your youngest brother always comes to you because he knows that you're going to help do this or whatever that is. Yeah.
Oh man. Well, Tess, this has been a great conversation. We were all over the map, and that's just like your book. And that's the thing I appreciate so much about it is life isn't one thing that we're focused on, right? There's so many different things that we got to juggle and tread water
Yeah. Yeah.
with. So now that it's September and we've almost made it through, that first week of school, I think the treading is slowing down for parents, hopefully, and you can float.
There you go. Just enjoy.
Yeah.
Now, last question I have for you. Do you have a favorite story from the book?
Oh, I don't even know. I love this story. The first story in the book is about the corn crib, and which is about when I was little, and it reminds me of my dad, and growing up on the farm. And because my dad passed away in 2018, so I kind of like that story because it kind of encapsulates my life with my dad as a child growing up, and then it shows the end of my dad's life, which I don't love thinking about that in that way, but it was a gift because we knew that my dad was sick. When he was diagnosed, they gave him 30 days to live, and he lived 30 days. So, but in a way that's a gift because that. So we don't always know.
Yeah.
Like, none of us know. I mean, we didn't know that. It might have been a different number, but we knew this time is precious. So I could take time off work and stay at his house with him and spend that time with him. And that's such precious time because we don't know the time that we have left with anybody, with our families or whatever. So that's kind of I don't want to end this podcast on that note because that's kind of a sad sounding thing to talk about. But my dad loved to laugh and he loved to write. And so I think that I wish I could share my book with him. He would have been over the moon happy about it. So that's the first story in the book, includes him and spending time with him on the farm. So maybe that's my favorite.
Perfect.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Tess. I appreciate the time that you've made to share all of this with us today. And for everyone who watched or listened to this, thank you for letting us disrupt your everyday.
Thanks for listening to the Disrupt the Everyday podcast. For more ways to listen, connect with us on social media. To be a guest or to partner with us, check out our link tree at Disrupt the Everyday. Join us next time for more ways to disrupt the everyday. Bye.